mighty sword stands at the castle door. Evil forces on the rise, gotta keep eternity as skies blue. Fueled by his sight, strong and true, man at arms brings the power to Skeletor with his evil schemes. Humans ready, battle screams. Defend Castle Grayskull, stand for the light, never fall, never hide. He-Man's might. Skeletor strikes hard, cruel and wild. He-Man stands firm, fearless child. Battle cries echo through the night. Team of spear gleams in the moonlight. Power of Grayskull flows within. He-Man's heart won't let them win. Together we'll fight for the land. Eternity is hope in their hands. Defend Castle Grayskull, stand for the light. Never fall, never hide. He-Man's might. Defend Castle Grayskull, stand for the light. Never fall, never hide. He-Man's might. He-Man's might. He-Man's might. Skeletor strikes hard, cruel and wild. He-Man stands firm, fearless, strong. Battle cries echo through the night. Seal of spear gleams in the moonlight. Power of Grayskull flows within. He-Man's heart won't let them win. Together we'll fight for the land. Eternity is hope in their hands. Defend Castle Grayskull, stand for the light. Sealed by his sight, strong and true, man at arms brings the power to Skeletor with his evil schemes. He-Man's ready, battle screams. Castle Grayskull, stand for the light. Never fall, never hide. He-Man's might. Defend Castle Grayskull, stand for the light. Never fall, never hide. He-Man's might. Skeletor strikes hard, cool and wild. He-Man stands firm, fearless, strong. Battle cries echo through the night. Seal of spear gleams in the moonlight. Power of Grayskull flows within. He-Man's heart won't let them win. Together we'll fight for the land. Eternity is hope in their hands. Defend Castle Grayskull, stand for the light. Never fall, never hide. He-Man's might.
Initialize dampeners. Cut and defeat. Begin transmission.
This program is intended for mature audiences. Parental discretion is advised.
Hello, Rickster. Welcome to Weird Painting. And we're going to talk about it's something I didn't do it. I was really working hard. All right, so possible to Can you hear me now? Hear me now. I need to know because I can see that I can see my mic moving, audio cutting in and out. Okay. Always an issue. Chat here now on right property up. How's that sound? Does that sound a little better, folks? I hope that sounds a lot better. Slightly better. It's only slightly better. All right. Let me make sure I don't have any filters on this. All right. I'm going to go ahead and turn the noise gate off. All right. And that is better. Perfect, says Jim. Okay. All right. So there we go. All right, thank you for everyone. Insanely low. Yeah, I don't know why my mic, it automatically cuts down that low. As soon as I get OBS started, I don't know what does that. Anyway, back to where we were. So I didn't do a show last night. I worked on a video that's going to come out on Thursday. So stay tuned. It's a classic, weird, fantastic toy adventure. So you guys should enjoy that. But let's talk about tariffs. Okay, I've actually got something set up for us today, so we can do that. All right, so it's a topic that's been shaking up the toy aisles and collector shelves alike. Recent tariffs have been imposed on Chinese imports, and let's talk about how they're impacting our beloved hobby. It was fine before you completely cut off the noise gate for future reference. Okay, thanks, Jim. All right, so I could cut that back on, but I'm going to leave the noise gate off for right now. Before we dive in, let's set the stage. So recently, the U.S. government implemented a significant tariff on goods imported from China. Given that nearly 80% of toys sold in the U.S. are manufactured there, this move has sent ripples through the industry. For instance, let's just talk about just a classic Tonka steel mighty dump truck. Previously retailed for $29.99, now expected to jump to $39.99 by fall. A hefty increase for one single item, but it's not just Tonka. The trend is affecting a wide range of toys from action figures to board games. So, what does that mean for us collectors? Well, higher prices could make it more challenging to acquire new pieces for our collection. It might also affect the resale market as increased costs could dampen demand. Not all gloom and doom. The situation also presents an opportunity to explore new avenues, perhaps focusing on vintage items, local artisans, or even DIY projects. The collector community is nothing if not resilient and creative. So, let's open the floor. How are these changes affecting your collecting habits? Are you shifting your focus or your strategies? Let's discuss this and more today on the Sunday Hangout. Now, let's get into the chat here and let's see what you guys are saying about all this. Tariff is not logical. That is my opinion, says Rickster. Okay. Fair enough. All right. So I'm curious to see what you guys think about such things. I have prepared something for us to look at here today, and I will pull that up. So we have tariffs in the toy industry and how the new changes will impact collectors like us. So what's really going on here? Let's talk about how this is affecting the toy industry. Businesses like Big Bad Toy Store and, yep, on us collectors. We're not going to get political. This isn't left. This isn't right or center. It's just the reality that we're all dealing with as toy fans. So just keep that in mind. Yeah. Let's talk about what's going on with the tariffs. So recently, the U.S. government introduced a wave of new tariffs on Chinese imports, dramatically increasing costs on products made overseas. For 25 years, importers like Big Bad Toy Store operated with a 0% tariff. Then boom, 10, then 20, then 34, and then another 50% as of April 9th, an additional 21% That's a whopping 125% total tariff on Chinese-made goods. Vietnam, another major manufacturer, is also set to be hit with a 46% tariff. But that's not, that's been temporarily reduced to 10% for the next 90 days. So between those two countries, that's 90% of the products in Big Bad Toy Store's catalog. Recently, Joel spoke out about this. Joel Boblet, the founder of Big Bad Toy Store, recently sent a message out to his customers. And man, he didn't hold back. He called the tariff situation ridiculous, poor thought out, poorly implemented, cruel, and punishing. Joel laid it out. These tariffs aren't paid by China. They're paid by the U.S. importers like Big Bad Toy Store. And when the bill comes due, it gets passed down to us, the collectors, through price hikes. Big Bad Toy Store is trying to cushion the blow. They're negotiating with vendors, absorbing some of the costs, and now applying a tariff surcharge to pre-orders. So when your toy ships, you'll see that extra charge, anywhere from 15% to 40% depending upon the item. Now, you will get notified before your card is charged, and you can cancel if it's too much. Honestly, that kind of transparency is refreshing from an online toy company, you have to say. So, what does that mean for us? Let's talk about how this hits us. All right, let's be real. A 15 to 40% jump in price. That's brutal, man. That's brutal. Especially for those of us chasing full waves. Now, I'm not doing that except for maybe superpowers, okay? But there are people that are looking at vehicles, exclusives, the whole drill. So what could this mean? This might mean picking and choosing a little more carefully. It might mean skipping a wave. Or turning more toward vintage and secondhand markets where the prices aren't being shaken like a snow globe. Some of you are probably already feeling this. A $30 deluxe figure can now run you $40 or even $45. And that's not even touching shipping. So what are we going to do to adapt? All right, so we are a scrappy bunch, us collectors. We've weathered figure shortages, scalpers, factory eras. Now it's tariffs. We've already seen folks shifting towards custom figures, supporting independent creators, or doubling down on vintage lines. But, hey, if the big boys are pricing us out, maybe it's time to shine the spotlight on some of those smaller shops, Etsy legends. There are creators out there making custom capes, heads, weapons, heck, entire figures. They're doing it with love. You're looking at Cape Master. You're looking at Lee's Customs. These guys are creating a custom smorgasbord. There's guys doing Superpowers figures. So we could go into all that. So I want you guys to talk to us, okay? I want you guys to talk to us. Have you been hit by a surprise price hike? Did you get Joel's email? What was your reaction to it? Would a 40% tariff surcharge make you cancel a pre-order? How are you adapting? More vintage, more DIY? Come on, drop your thoughts in the chat. Let's kick it around live and let's see where this see where this leads, and let's kind of help each other out. So, Grindhead Jim says the long and short of it for me is to ride it out. None of this is set in stone. The longer it lasts, the less I will buy over time. I do think that that's a good strategy, Jim, to ride this out. I think that there is an end point to this. And I don't think that this is permanent by any means. And it may be in the long term a good thing. We don't know. We will see in the future. George Valentine says, I don't know that I have much of an input on this because I collect mostly old tin toys. We'll see. That's going down to the adaptation there. So more vintage for you is not going to be affected by the tariff, in other words. Shaitan's Hammer says toy prices were going up long before the tariffs, and that's true. And they're not going to go down, folks. They're not going to go down. I think we're going to see that $25 toy become 30, perhaps even 35 here soon. Maybe even 40. Companies were already price hiking. Yep. And also, Shaitan says he tends to buy on the secondary market. So that's how he's working that out. That's how he's going to do that. All right, so let's move to the next slide here, and let's talk about that. Richter says George Valentine tariffs will be affecting the shipping. Well, they're actually paid at the dock. Okay, when those shipping containers come in from China, those tariffs are due for those goods as soon as they hit the dock. If you refuse to pay the tariffs or you can't pay the tariffs, those goods will be destroyed. They're not shipped back where they come from or anything. They're destroyed right there on the spot if the tariff's not paid. Grindhead Jim, and I apologize that I can't see this on the screen. It's a flaw of our wonderful featured chat thing here. I agree with your overall assessment that this is temporary. There's also some movement from the industry as toy game and video game associations are seeking exemptions from the tariff altogether. There's that. There's also other alternatives. So India also has plastic factories. So there could be some negotiation to move some of the manufacturing that's being done in China and Vietnam to India to avoid this. We'll see how it works out. I mean, this is like you said, this is a temporary thing, and there are many alternatives to this. Getting back, yeah. We're going to adapt. Nobody likes these price hikes, especially when they feel that this is sudden and unavoidable. But knowing what's going on behind the curtain helps. And if there's one thing the Weird Fantastic community does better than anybody, roll with the punches, find the fun, and keep that collecting spirit alive. So that's kind of where I'm at on this today. So, all right. So I'm at the end of our slideshow, and I'm ready to just have a good interaction with you guys. So let me know what you guys think. All right. Melbor says hit the thumbs up if you haven't done so already. Thanks, Melbor. Bjorn Jorgensen here with a Smebulock. George Valentine says shipping true. However, in the tin toy market, you mostly have to shop in person at antique stores, yard sales, and flea markets. Yeah, vintage stuff, man. And it's already out there, and it's not subject to tariffs because it's already been made. So, yeah, there's that. So, that is the end of my little presentation on all this. So, there we go. It didn't take me long to get through that. So, if you guys want any music and fun, let me know. If there's anything else we can talk about, I certainly would be glad to. But that's my little assessment on this, and we covered what Big Bad said. Now I'm curious if Entertainment Earth has said anything, because I haven't heard. I've been personalizing my cartoon collection, He-Man. Yeah. And personalization is where it's at, dude, and that is what I have been doing. And before any of this hit, I had started going back to my old ways. So, I pretty much am done with Origins. I got what I want. I'm happy with what I have. And with Rio Blast coming in, I've got him already. And with Modulock, I said that was where I was going to quit. And I'm done. No Origins. I'm not doing cartoon collection. I'm not doing any of the other stuff with He-Man. I stuck with Origins and stayed there, so I did good. Grindhead says the ideal solution would be manufacturing here in America. Of course it would, but that's going to take a long time, and the result price hikes would be higher than even the current tariffs. It would be, because you have to pay United States minimum wages and not Chinese minimum wage. I could hop on if desired. All right, I will attempt to set that up, Jim. That's going to be a little hard because of what we're doing here. I'd have to set up the Ninja. Melbourne, put Jim on. All right. Love to see more stuff toys produced in the future. Bill would get too bad. Anyone want to bet? Yeah, you keep on betting, dude. I told you I wasn't getting too bad. I'm like it or not an eBay buyer. Did you get a haircut? Why? Yes, I did, Bjorn. Good of you to notice. All right, let me see if I can get Video Ninja rolling here, and get Jimbo on. It's going to take me a second here to set this up and get Jim invited. So, give me a sec here. Yeah, I was due for a haircut. That is correct, Rickster. So, I'm going to send this link to your Instagram. We'll see if we can't get you on, Jim. And we'll see how that works out. Hopefully it will work out good. So, that would be great. Grind hit, Jim. All right. And we add this onto the thing so you can get in easily. Copy. All right. Hang with me, folks. I want to see if we can get Grind Head in here. All right. Try the link that I just sent you there in your Instagram, Jim, and we'll see if we can't get you on. It's going to take a second for me to set him up, folks. So it's going to be kind of fun to watch this play out. But yeah. It'll take me a second here to set everything up. So I'm going to try to get Jim to come on, and in the meantime, we'll see how this works out. I'll tell you what I'll do while I'm waiting for Jim to respond to that. Let's see if we can set up a little bit of music and fun. Let's see what I got set up here first of all. There we go. All right. All right. Let's see what we got in here. Take that out. Take that out. I'm going to add just one little song in here. Let's see here. There we go. I got a little set of music and fun here while I wait for Jim to respond back to me here. And we'll see if we can't get this set up for you guys. All right, so we'll watch a little bit of music and fun and see if I can get Jim to come on into my Video Ninja.
Command. There once was a ship that put to sea, and the name of the ship was the Billy O.T. The winds blew up her bow, dip down, oh below my bully boys blow. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. She'd not been 2 weeks from shore when down on her a right whale bore. The captain called all hands and swore he'd take that whale in tow. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. The boat had hit the water, the whale's tail came up and caught her. All hands to the side, harpooned and fought her when she dived down low. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. No line was cut, no whale was freed. The captain's mind was not of greed, and he belonged to the whaleman's creed. She took that ship in tow. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. For 40 days or even more, the line went slack, then tight once more. All boats were lost, there were only 4, but still that whale did go. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. As far as I've heard, the fight's still on, the line's not cut and the whale's not gone. The wellerman makes his regular call to encourage the captain, crew and all. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go. Soon may the wellerman come to bring us sugar and tea and rum. One day when the tonguing is done, we'll take our leave and go.
Every soul, storage iron, just crushed and crumbled. I'm not sure if it's safe to report from my vantage point. I really need to leave. Solar defenses inform me that the surrounding areas are in ruin. I see some people running now. In the opinion of this reporter, if this nation, or in fact the world, ever needed heroes, that time is now. That time is now.
All right, there we go. Now, can you hear me, Jim?
Sure can. You hear me all right?
All right, I need to ask the chat, are you hearing an echo on here? Are you hearing an echo from Jim's mic feeding into mine? I think the ducks are playing. Let me get them turned off. There we go. All right, ducks are off. I'm going to go in and put my noise gate back on, and that's going to help things a great deal. Probably going to... We're professional here.
True story.
Ain't my down yet a bit there, and that will... All right, give me a test 1 2 there, Jim.
Test 1 2. Test 1 2.
All right, very good, very good. That works. All right. Hopefully, I'm not bleeding mic, and hopefully you're not bleeding mine. And now we can get on. And so, I apologize to you, Jim. I did not get to catch your live stream. I know that was it Monday you talked about this thing. I think from the Big Bad Toy.
Well, it was actually right. It was a pre-recorded video because I was like, I was going to do a live stream, but I thought, no, I want to keep it succinct and just kind of lay it on. I didn't mean to interrupt, but I wanted to make that clear because I would not have live streamed for 6 minutes.
Okay, I got you.
Basically, a lot of what you're saying is what I was saying, just kind of like calling out the fact that they were being very transparent about what was going on. Some people in the comments were complaining that, well, they were raising prices beforehand and now they're transparent. Oh, and it's like, you know what? Hey, this is unprecedented stuff. You know, no one's had to deal with this before in this industry, right? So, you know, for me, it kind of boils down to they're scrambling. They're doing the best that they can under the circumstances. And when the tariff, let's say, is what is it, 125% or whatever the hell it is, to only get a maximum of 40% of that trickled down to the customer, that's significant. That means less than a third of the tariff that could possibly be imposed is being passed down to the consumer. And that is ballsy to get right to the point. Like it's like, okay, if you're doing that kind of work, you're eliminating that much trickle down. I don't see it affecting everything. What it will affect, at least for me, is like the nice to haves, the things that like I don't require in my collection, then I won't get them. You know, for example, I accidentally bought a second Adventure Series short round figure for Indiana Jones, and I was like, "Fuck!" I didn't mean to buy a second one, but then I realized, I could just take off his jacket, take off his hat, and then I have one to pair with the shirtless Temple of Doom Indy, and you can kind of have different things. Like, that'll be fine. It's whatever. But I will be much more vigilant in this tariff imposed climate about what I get and what I don't get, you know. And some people I've seen comparing to other goods like furniture that are made in China, other goods. And I was like, people that are buying those kinds of goods from China, you know, through Amazon or similar stores, they're not going to see the effect of this for like 6 months, maybe a year. The reason being is that a lot of this furniture, a lot of these goods that Amazon and other places sell, they're sitting in North American warehouses. They're not needing to replenish stock right away. Whereas toys and video games, other things are kind of like pushed to the consumer as they ship. It's very different than other industries. And I think people don't think about that when they're like comparing, you know, who's going to get affected. And I think that's why you're seeing the Toy Makers Association and the Video Game Developers Association and so on banding together to get this kind of squashed.
I saw a discussion, and I think a lot of that even paid attention to it. A lot of it was in jest. I think trying to make light of this, but I have heard this other. It's going to move. It's going to move all the industry back to America, so make it great again. Have it here in America, which is a good thing and also a bad thing. But here's the thing: first, you're not going to ramp up a plastic factory capable of producing action figures in the next 6 months, a year, or even 2 years. Take a period of time for that to happen. What happens if you do? Well, you got to hire American workers. American workers, they want a livable wage. They're not going to work in sweatshop conditions. I'm not saying that they won't. I'm saying that for the most part, use a factory that is basically treating everybody like Hebrew slaves in there. Eventually, it's going to unionize, and that's not going to be a good thing for whoever thinks that paying those kind of wages. So you can't pay Chinese wages to American workers. Now, so that doesn't mean that there's going to be more toys and they're going to cost less, right?
No, because I have real world experience with this. I actually worked in a plastic molding factory in the late 90s. And it was all it was we were making, there was probably, I don't know, a dozen or so different products that were being made in this relatively small factory. It's probably about the size of, say, like a Dollar General, but it had verticality to it because of the machines or whatever. So we were making simple, like large bottles, plant potters, things like that. So you see like the molds and everything. And, you know, this is a really basic kind of injection molding thing. And my job was to cut off excess plastic from the molds and then push them along for finishing, and then out the door they would go. It was a two-step process in essence, right? Very simple. And over 25 years ago, I was making $12 an hour doing that. 25 years ago.
Right.
Okay.
Now,
So
now contrast that to what
that's exactly
Chinese
to your
worker
point.
is making today.
Right. Which is still far less. You know, and it's not a one-to-one comparison. You know, if there was this is one of those times where, you know, we talk about AI and automation replacing human workers. This is one of those few industries where if we moved it to America, that would make sense to replace the human workers with the machines and the AI, which is kind of ironic in many ways, I think. But again, you still have to spin up the place. Often you have to build the facility if you're not going into a building that exists. You've got to hire workers. You do have, it just takes time to build these things up.
So in other words,
awesome,
what we're saying, folks, is this isn't an overnight thing. It doesn't mean that suddenly everything's going to get cool in a year's time. And even if it did, look, we contrasted that with what the real world price increase would be if we made action figures in America and China. Now, I did talk about an alternate China and Vietnam. That is India. Now, once again,
yes,
their factories are not geared for this stuff right now, so they would have to get the molds over there. They would have to gear all of that stuff up, get the workers trained, get them on task. That's another time of positions. That's not going to happen. Iridium Hanger Bill sounds quiet. Maybe up his volume. My volume need to be increased again. Hadn't got.
Yes, it sounds good on my end, but
Well, I don't know. It all depends on what the actual mic volume. And Masters Maniac Mexico Grolo is in here, and he says he tried to send me an email, but my email I don't have. I do have the same email I've always had. Apparently, you're not sending the correct one. My email, and I'm not going to give out my main email here on live on the air, but you can send an email to me at Weird Fantastic Toys. That's all one word. Weird Fantastic Toys at gmail.com, and I will get that email eventually, and I will be able to send you a link to another email that you can send it to that will get directly to you. I'm working on upping my volume for Tyridium Hanger here. Bjorn says, by the time someone sets a toy manufacturing here, the tariff situation is going to be over. And that's a good point. Very good point. Rolo says, Hasbro was asking for $60 for Filmation Spider-Man figures way before the Turmoil started. Now they have justification for the prices. About that, and I just lost Jim. Like Bone Breaking Action says, "Import no more shipping." There's Jim back. Okay, no more shipping. Millionaire on Temu. Okay, and then,
right.
All right. That let's.
That is one thing that I guess I hadn't really considered until just now. But now that as soon as I heard the word Temu, I was like, "Oh, this could kill Temu," and I would be so happy. I'd be so happy if this killed Temu.
Yeah.
Oh my God!
All those people drop shipping that stuff directly from China. That way before the tariff situation came in, they were going to put a bug in that. There was I saw a video the other day, way before this happened, that they would start throwing a wrench into that drop shipping crap from China. Yeah, my volume went back down again. There we go, back up to 100%. And I'm just going to leave this be so that I can get to it quickly in case I have to change my volume again. I'm sorry about that, folks. I don't know what keeps pulling my volume down.
That would be Video Ninja. And there is a plugin in. Are you using Chrome right now that will actually disable that? But you'd have to reload. Yeah,
I am using Chrome, but yeah.
I'll send you a link to that on the off chance you need to grab it. But
all right, I appreciate that. All right,
sure.
So anyway, as far as these tariffs go, a lot of people are getting kind of upset about them. I think that, and I don't want to get political, right? I know that there's a lot of people. There's a lot of hatred on both sides, and some of it is justified, and some of it not so much justified. But let's talk about what's going on. So, say let's take a different industry, like the auto industry, for instance. This may help the auto industry in that. All right, so instead of buying a Toyota, now you go buy a Ford or a Chevrolet. And the problem with that is it may work in an industry like that, or say an industry like you were talking about earlier, of a furniture industry where there are furniture factories over here, and there is manufacturing made over here, and it may offset the fact that you could go buy cheap made China goods and instead pay a price similar to what that costs now for something American made. But as far as the plastics industry goes, that's not an option. Then you have overarching repercussions to this that people are not looking at, and that I see in my industry, which I'm not going to tell you what I do, but let's just say that we deal with metal. Okay. So right now, a lot of our steel is coming from somewhere else other than America. So our materials are starting to dry up because we can't get material because it costs too much to get it, or it's not coming in like we want it to. It's not being ordered. The people who we order it from have to get it from overseas, China. I think tungsten steel comes from Vietnam, Korea, places like that. So you need steel to make automobiles, people. So that means the automobiles made in America are going to cost more because you got to pay more to get the material to make the automobile with. You're not thinking things all the way through. You're thinking on a shallower level in which you have to think about. Now, am I saying that we shouldn't have tariffs at all? No, I'm not. I'm also not saying that that we shouldn't try to get the other countries to take the tariffs that they have on us, which are down to a reasonable level. So maybe there's time for some negotiation. Now, I will give him this 90-day pause on this so that people can have a chance to come to the negotiation table and think about things. Maybe get it
just for Vietnam. Just for Vietnam, not on China. There's actually been raised.
Everything
else
not dealing with China at all. Okay, I understand that.
Right.
I'm talking about other countries other than China. For some reason, he's focused on China,
Right.
and I think that there's some kind of end game that he's got involved in that. I'm not sure what it is.
Well, I will say that before any of this happened, doesn't matter what administration we're talking about. So this is apolitical. Okay, this has nothing to do with a party or anything like that. The U.S. is into China for a lot of money. We owe them crazy amounts of money that we've borrowed over the years for various purposes and whatnot, right? Now, I don't know if that has anything to do with the posturing that's happening with the tariffs right now or not. I don't know. And I don't claim to know, and I don't necessarily care. But I will say that there is a power struggle inherent just in the kind of lukewarm war that's happening between China and the U.S. as far as being a superpower and whatnot. And maybe that has something to do with it. I haven't heard an explanation that makes sense. So, but I'm only offering that as the only thing I can possibly think of that has anything to do with it as far as it being a power struggle sort of situation. But I don't think it necessarily matters why this is happening or what party in America is putting it forth. It's crappy. I don't care who would institute this. I'd be just as upset over it. It's just, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But like I said in my video, regardless of how we got here, this is the situation that we're in. And we're here to discuss, like, well, what did we do? And although it probably isn't permanent, it's very unlikely permanent. It still is like, dude, really? Like, this is the way you chose to do whatever it is you're doing? you know, and I can see that being an easy button for a lot of people to hit, not just the guy that's in office right now. So I don't. It just seems like I can't, aside from trying to hurt China's bottom line, it really does hurt the consumer. And I think there might be an assumption that although we don't have American made toys to necessarily replace the ones that we're buying from overseas, that perhaps we'll pay more, we'll spend that same money into things that are here in America instead. Like, maybe there's somebody saying, and I'm only playing devil's advocate here because I'm trying to understand, right? Maybe there's someone that is trying to tell the administration, well, if they can't buy toys that are made in Vietnam and China, maybe they'll buy this widget from an American manufacturer said that's totally not toys. They'll just switch hobbies or something. I'm not switching my hobbies. I'm just going to be more thoughtful about how I do it. So I really do think that this is something that's meant to be a bargaining chip for political reasons, whatever those might be. And that once that bargaining or whatever we want to call it is over, we're going to see a major reduction, if not an elimination, of these tariffs. So I don't think it'll last long. But even though it is still here, I worry about the people that maybe this was the year you ordered something really big through Big Bad or something like that. Like this time last year, I was waiting for Unicron to show up. That's a $350 toy. And a 40% hike on that would have been devastating. It was already a difficult thing to justify paying that much for. You know, my Eternia, which I paid aftermarket price for, was imported from Canada. Can you imagine? Right? Like it's. I don't think it will affect me a ton right now because of where I'm at with my collection. Thank goodness. Yes, there'll probably be a couple things I've got to pay more for, and I'm willing to do that within reason for certain things. And I know in my heart this I don't think this will be forever, but my heart does go out to somebody who maybe they are building up their collection for the first time, or they're just getting back to a place where they can do it, and it's going to affect them. And I just feel bad for the people that are going to be really affected. I know that's not a complete thought, but it really bugs me.
I'm gonna say this. All right, so we've already seen one company, Fresh Monkey Fiction, cancel a Kickstarter, and it was
the entire thing. Yep.
There's a question that has been addressed 2 or 3 times already on this very show. Why doesn't Mattel make their own figures directly in the USA? First of all, there aren't any plastic factories that make figures in America. There are plastic factories in America. There's one right near me in Sardis, Mississippi. If you go to Home Depot or to Lowe's and you want to buy a 5-gallon bucket, 99% of those 5-gallon buckets are probably going to they're sold there, probably made in that plastics factory right here in Mississippi. Can that plastic factory make action figures? Well, it probably could if it was tooled to do so. In order to do that, you have to have the machinery and the tooling to do it, and you have to have the workers to do it, and you have to pay them. How long would it take to tool that factory up to do that? Well, first of all, they're not going to stop making plastic buckets because they make a ton of money making them plastic buckets. Probably a hell of a lot more than they would making action figures in there. 90% of the cost of making an action figure is not from just injection molding plastic. It's from assembly.
That's the cheap part.
Yeah. It's from assembly. Once you get the action figure out of the mold, you got to put it together. Then you've got to put the paint applications on it, the deco, if you will. And then I've seen collectors, and collectors love to bitch and moan and complain about the lack of deco on things now as opposed to before. Yes, there you go. A cost-cutting measure when making an action figure is to mold the action figure in the colors that it needs to be in, and not have to pay somebody to sit down and paint that action figure by hand. That deco, those washes and those dry brushes that you see that bring out all that detail, a human being has to do that by hand. There is not a machine that does that, folks.
And this is like, we talk, a lot of people complain about like mold reuse and stuff. So, for example, I use this 89 Batman figure as an example. There is some mold reuse in this figure, sure, because they did a Michael Keaton Batman for the Flash. But every single piece in this case has a mold that has to be made. Then they have to do the die cast mold multiples, because you can't just have one running it. You've got to have multiple of these going at one time to mass produce these. You have to have a vacuum form for all the interior plastic. You've got, probably outsourced a printing plant to print and then emblazon with the plastic reinforcement, the box. This is making a toy in and of itself can be a relatively simple process, but it ain't cheap because there's so many different steps to it. The more, especially at the quality and detail that we are accustomed to as modern collectors, right? Even the stuff that we got when we were kids, very, very complex process that takes multiple hands, multiple machines, multiple molds. And to do that at the standard of, an American factory worker, where you have unions that are constantly vying for better wages, better benefits, safer conditions, things that in China they can't do it.
Right.
So like that's why the cost is lower. You just can't do it.
Let me get into the chat just a little bit here, Jim, and maybe we can address some issues.
Sure.
So, Bjorn says, imagine how much that big ass dragon would cost. Yeah, imagine that.
Oh my God.
Boba Hicks, I guess, is saying, answering Richter, saying because it's cheaper to produce them outside of the states, which he's correct. Richter says the Eternia set must have cost you at least $1,200 coming from Canada. Richter,
right around there.
Richter says maybe it's time that they did their own figures in the USA now. I'll play devil's advocate on that. Maybe it is, and then maybe it's time for us collectors to have to pay the piper on that as a result. Maybe we'll see. Okay, I'm just playing devil's advocate here with him, Jim, because I think he's stirring the pot.
I get it.
Going on down, Boba Hicks says maybe it's time for America to suffer for its past sins. That's why I kind of chuckled a minute ago, because I read that comment. And Bjorn Jorgensen asking the Melvor, did he get his bags yet? I'm gonna go ahead and answer that for you, Jim. No, he did not.
No, he does not.
Joneser's Comics and Toys. Hey, what's up, Joneser? Good to see you, my pal. He says, hopefully this will all pass soon. I'm fortunate to only have a few things on order and none too expensive, and these are first world problems. True enough. Toy tax, tariffs, and fees, and what have you. Yeah, I mean, it's not like we have to have this stuff. It's not like we're going to not live if we don't have it. But
Right.
We can still bitch and groan and moan about it, because that's what we do as human beings. Moving on. Now that we have 3D printing machines, these companies can't afford it. Look, you can 3D print a action figure, but you're not going to do it at the rate that you can with injection molded toys that are done in steel molds. Okay, thank you. You've got.
Never mind the
Right.
Never mind the
You've got a
quality.
3D printer. Tell them how long it takes to print a freaking stand for an action figure.
Okay, so these stands that I use. Okay, these are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts, and I have to print them each part in bulk. I have to do like 6 at a time, and to do 6 of them. So there's like 2 different print sets to make one. To say 6 stands. So it's roughly usually about 2 to 3 hours to make one set of parts, but you do that twice at 6 hours. So bare minimum an hour to make one of these things, not including assembly, because I have to assemble it, right? And 3D printing is not an exact science. I don't care what printer you've got. it's not feasible yet. We're close with the technology in terms of being a bit faster than it used to be, being more accurate,
Now
being
let's
better
talk about
quality.
how
But
much
it's
you
just
can
not.
produce with an injection molding machine in a plastics factory.
Oh, you can just bang them out, dude.
That's what I'm talking. 3D printing is not going to replace injection molded plastic. Thank you. Moving
Not
on.
anytime soon.
No. The price of toys will be the least of your worries over the coming economic shitstorm, says Boba Hicks. He's probably right about that, too. Melvor
And
says
that was kind of like.
Go ahead.
And that was kind of like something I brought up in my video ever so briefly. It's like part of the reason I think collectors are getting so bent out of shape over this, aside from the obvious, is that this was the one place, the collecting was where this is an escape for us. This is something that is supposed to bring joy. This is supposed to be aside from all the day-to-day nonsense, wherever you fall on whatever political spectrum,
hobby.
we can all come
That's
together.
What
we
hobbies
can talk,
are for.
right? Exactly. And so for this kind of socio and economic thing to impact that in a place where we now have to, are quote forced unquote, to have these discussions within the hobby that is supposed to bring us together, it hurts. So I understand why people are upset.
All right, Melvor says, I've started being more selective with my toy purchases recently, haven't we all? And this was even before the tariff situation, to be honest with you. But current events will obviously make me get even less. The only silver lining would be a lot less frivolous buys. And Ted Darkclaw comes in saying, hello, friends. Hello, Ted. And I did catch most of you guys, at least the beginning of your show the last weekend about this, Ted, before I had to hit the sack. Melvor says the tariffs are too high on those bags. Melvor says that you can keep the bags, I'm guessing. And
Melvor, you could just come get your bags, brother. You got like 5.5 months, buddy.
This meme is going to go on forever for him.
Oh yeah, even after he gets them, we're just not going to tell anybody he got them. It's going to be great.
Richter says, I'm just trying to bring solutions that will on cost with all the advanced technology in the world. Yeah. I don't think
there yet.
No, not even nowhere near it.
I wish it were.
Yeah, me too. This is temporary, and there will be a goal to reinvigorate American manufacturing, which is better for everyone. I think that's what the goal is. I think that maybe there's a little heavy-handedness going on with this, and perhaps some thought needs to go into how all of this is being implemented instead of just deciding, oh, okay, we're going to put 25% tariff on this and 30% tariff on that, and the next thing you know, it's 125% tariff on goods coming from a country. Come on now. Fear monger. Well, I agree with that. I mean, just let me get through this chat a second here, Jim. Sorry. I don't believe I have anything of value to add to the conversation, so I'm sitting back and enjoying the back and forth. There you go, George. Richter says, in Canada, we're suffering from more than most from any other countries than we did before these tariffs. And Boba Hicks, of course, now this is going to be funny. The goal is pie in the sky bullshit. You can't beat the Chinese. No, I'll let you.
I tend to agree when it comes to these kinds of manufacturing, like the cost to result. I don't think that we're in a position to do that. I don't think any country right now is in a position to one-to-one beat the value proposition of Chinese created goods overall. And if someone wants to innovate, fucking go innovate. But I don't see it happening in my lifetime to where it's viable unless the technology does some crazy 180 in terms of like we would have to have a second industrial revolution, like that level of that speed.
Stranger things have happened, but like Jim is saying, I don't personally, I don't think that we're going to see anything happen innovatively in the next 6 months. It's going to change things drastically.
Hell no. No, and to Rickster's comment with Canada, yeah, Canada's always had the short end of the stick when it comes to imported goods, in generally speaking, because usually it comes into the U.S. and then it goes up to Canada, and with the value of their dollar varying in the way that it does, I feel for them because it's hard to do business up there for whatever the actual reasoning is. I don't understand that. I don't claim to understand that. But yeah, before all this happened, they were still screwed over big time on cost of these things for sure. Absolutely.
Bjorn Jorgensen says we're never going to reach the level of manufacturing here for a very, very long time. Talking about Chinese manufacturing. Rickster says, I wonder, he wonders what's coming from Canada if I buy it directly from China. Is it going to be cheaper?
If there's an avenue to do that, I would assume so, because you're not enacting the tariffs that we are in your country. But I don't know that there's a pipeline or a supply chain in place to do that. I wouldn't be surprised, and that's an interesting point that I hadn't considered until just now. What if, this is a big what if, so that grain of salt the size of a boulder, right? What if some of these companies explore importing into Canada and then importing down from Canada, which would be a much smaller chunk of tariff, even though Canada is getting that. Again, total speculation, but it would be one way around.
Well, I'm sure a lot of this is being explored by the toy companies right now. They've got
I'd imagine, yeah,
they've got their minds. Those people with the minds in their company to think about this stuff, thinking about all these avenue thoughts right now, and going through different scenarios, and possibly even putting out economic models on those to see how they're going to work out, and on paper at least anyway. But in the short term, what are we going to be doing? Well, on my end, it's basically going back to basics. I'm going back to collecting one toy line, not necessarily everything from that toy line, and going with a lot of customized stuff. What about you, Jim?
One of the things that I've been kind of espousing for a while, both privately and on the channel, is that I am at a point with my collecting where it's very clear to me that we've outgrown this space for the collection. So I already know I can't display everything. If I can't display everything, and I'm pretty happy overall where I'm at, there's not for example, I slowed down almost to a trickle when it comes to Action Force, to a lesser degree G.I. Joe Classified and some of the other lines. Playmates isn't having the release cadence that I would have liked a year ago, which is an advantage because, okay, I don't have to worry about the turtle stuff as much. And also there's not that many left of those that I need. I'm focusing mainly on continuing with the Origins line, and I'm focusing on superpowers. So it's kind of like coming full circle, right? I do get some cartoon collection stuff, particularly She-Ra and whatnot, but we're talking about picking and choosing there as well. We're talking about 2 to 3 figures per wave at most. And again, with the cadence of release being as slow as it is, that becomes an advantage for me. And then also this year was meant to be focusing a little bit more on some vintage stuff. I've got Star Wars stuff to fill out. I've got some Star Trek stuff that I'm getting. I'm getting close to the end thanks to that deal we made on the bridge, which I can't wait to get that thing out and actually display it, but that's another thing. Also, big focus for me was going to be this year anyway, Lauren's collection of the vintage Toy Biz Lord of the Rings stuff, which is, we're curating that as we go. So I feel like I'm already been slowing down pretty hard with all this stuff, and this is just making it a bit easier to justify. But I will also say that if these tariffs just suddenly go away, I don't know that my overall philosophy and approach to collecting this year going into next year would be that much different. So I'm one of those people that kind of got lucky with the timing of this.
Same here, and let me go through the chat, and then I got another avenue I want to explore here. The Melvor says that he's actually optimistic that we're near another industrial revolution with AI and robotic advancements. It's either that or we're going to go full on Mad Max. Okay, but Bjorn Jorgensen says that was interesting, but he'd rather go with the AI route. Okay, yeah, he doesn't want to go down the Mad Max route. Well, that would be interesting, I suppose. Thank you for dropping in, Mike V. Hope y'all have fun at soccer. Boba Hicks says, could it be possible that countries that are not directly involved in this U.S.-China trade war will get an opportunity to become gateways for both countries to circumvent each other's trade tariffs? Well, Jim talked about that earlier with Canada, maybe. Agree with Jim. If I could get anything else in my collection, I'd be okay with it for the most part. Richter says, you guys could buy it from the Canadians, but then again, we'd have to make some profit somewhere in the line. Would that be better or cheaper than going to China? Well, 125% tariff, I think, probably would be maybe a little cheaper. I don't know. Speaking of the Lord of the Rings stuff, I have it all in one spot there at Chucky's. So there you go.
Nice.
Richter says, trying to buy stuff from Australia. Go ahead, Jim.
Oh, I was just giving a thumbs up to Bjorn. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Shaitan's Hammer says he's always been a picker and chooser because he's not rich. Where am I, dude? And typical buying habits were around birthdays and Christmases, focusing mainly on Motu and occasionally Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Well, here's the thing, folks. And I'm going to get Jim's thoughts on this, but I'm going to espouse something here. From, I want to say, the late 1990s up until now, we have lived in a golden age of action figures and toys. We have seen unprecedented lines. We have seen unprecedented things happen in that period of time that were unheard of in the 80s and early 90s. We've got action figures that are fully articulated at the shoulders, at the elbows, at double jointed knees and elbows, heads, necks. 6-inch action figures that are almost as fully posable as a real human body from certain action figure producers. We've got action figures from lines that were thought long dead, Masters of the Universe, Superpowers, coming back into production for us collectors. As Gen Xers, that's who most of this stuff is being aimed at. I think it's not being aimed at little kids buying toys. They're not buying Superpowers, I don't think. They're not buying Masters of the Universe Origins, I don't think. There are toys out there for them, and it's going to affect them as well, but not in the same way. I'm wondering how long it's going to be, even without the tariffs, because we are already going to see some price increases. Marvel Legends is a good example. The price increases have happened steadily over the years. A Toy Biz Marvel Legend costs us $6.99. How much does a Mattel toy Marvel Legends figure cost today at comparison? Talking $6.99 figure. You're talking about almost a $25 figure now, and they were going to increase that price to $30. Right. I think that's going to happen anyway, regardless of the. How long is it going to be before action figures for Gen Xers are no longer being created anymore because there aren't enough of us? I'll give you a perfect example of what happened. We had G.I. Joe 12-inch dolls being sold because there was a market for those. That market is now so slim they don't create those anymore because there's no profit in making them, because there's not enough people buying them to make it worthwhile to sell them anymore. So even without these tariffs, we're still going to see price increase, and none of these prices are going to go down, folks. Go ahead, Jim.
No. Just, I think when it comes to the Gen X thing and the whole consumer base dying out, it's there's only one of two ways it's going to go. Okay. The one and the one that I think is the most likely is that as our generation dies off, morbid though it may be, the demand of these goes down. The other side of this is that they simply shift to the whim of the next generation, because we do have millennials behind us, and we have certainly the nostalgia for different things is going to be, you're going to see what happens. And I think we're 2 generations away from physical goods driven by nostalgia being something that's a viable commodity. So we're 2 generations away from that in general, okay? Because the 2 generations behind us are the people that everything's digital. They're used to it being digital, right? So we're not just talking about toys. We're talking about vinyl, CDs, Blu-rays, DVDs, any kind of media, any kind of physical good. The people of the younger generations just don't care enough about that. And that's probably a good thing. And overall, because it's less waste and all this other stuff, right? But that's not the point I'm trying to make. The point I'm trying to make is that they're either going to shift to the generations behind us, or they're just going to completely change what they make. That's the only options that they have. And although there are certainly a percentage of people that will latch on to stuff from our generation because they grew up around it, for example. So when we moved to Portland, my brother-in-law, who's 9 years old now, we plan to have him over at the house all the time. We want to be part of his growing up. It's one of the driving factors behind this movie. We want to be a part of his life. And he's going to be part of this big 30-foot room full of this stuff. And I feel like if he latches onto it at all, he'll become one of these niche buyers. So it's almost going to be like we have a recycle of where the toy industry was, say, late 90s, very early 2000s, where it was kind of like they weren't quite sure what to market. They'd gone a little too far. They pulled back and then slowly find what that generation of people want, because they were shifting away from the kid market into the adult market, right? And I feel like it'll happen all over again. I do feel like that's probably what's going to happen. Like Shaitan's Hammer is saying in chat, that loop. I think that's the most likely, if they don't just completely collapse the toy making as we know it today. I think those are the only two ways it's going to happen.
Richter says he thought the 80s were the golden age of toys, especially for getting kids to play with them. Well, the 80s it's a different. You're talking apples and oranges here. At that time, that's right. When all of these IPs were being created, and this was new intellectual property that wasn't tied to anything, and it was being produced for us and coming out for us. And of course, with the changes in the rules, we had actual TV shows like G.I. Joe and Master of the Universe to sell the freaking toys in the first place. And of course, and
I think that's the biggest piece people forget, is that the cartoons and the toys were intrinsically linked. You don't have that these days. You just don't. There's so much less of that, and there's so much more media to sift through to even get to the stuff that is there. It's just not the same, and that's, I think, why you saw the rise of pop vinyls, because it was a different take on an old concept of like, ooh, I like that character, so I want it on my shelf. It's a totally different thing. It's kind of like the new Precious Moments or Beanie Babies or whatever, and we're starting to see that market decline because people are like, well, I don't need a whole wall of white boxes anymore, right? It's difficult to predict the future, because I also know in my heart that for 25 years, I didn't think I was going to be into this stuff. And I remember dipping my toe in 4 years ago, and look at it now. I have one of the biggest collections in my peer group. I didn't set out to do that, but it happened, right? So I don't know what the whims of the consumer are going to be. I think it really comes down to that.
Well, here's the thing. As a group, I think Gen Xers are one of the few generations who have taken their beloved childhood loves and not only held them close to our heart, but it kept them with us all the way into adulthood and beyond. I'm talking not just comic books, cartoon shows, but and toy lines, all of that together.
Right.
Generations before us do that. They didn't even have that hardly. The generations after
the
us,
closest.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, like, the generation before us, like using our parents, right? They kind of came into their own hobby-wise as teenagers. Like, that's why you see a lot of hot rodders, things like that. Different kinds of crafts, where, and I don't mean this to be a stereotypical thing, but like textile-based hobbies, like sewing and knitting and things like that, and like doing up cars and to a lesser degree, you know, woodworking, stuff like that, that were like physical hobbies that you did something, you made it yourself. That seemed more like, you know, the previous generation with the boomers, where it just, they had a similar thing, but it wasn't a one-to-one, because usually you'd have that dad that bought that one car and he worked on that one car on the weekends for like 5 years before it was even drivable or whatever, right? You had the grandma that crocheted and did knit work, and you'd always knew you were good for like one set of coasters every Christmas because she was going to make them for you, whether you wanted them or not. That's the closest allegory for that previous generation. And the newer generation, it's not a question of will they have nostalgia for something in hobbies. It's a question of which ones will survive as they reach middle age. That's what I think.
Here's the other thing, though. As print media starts to go away, and it is, as comic books start to go away, and it is, as television itself and the way we watch television has changed drastically in the last 20 years, 10 years, really, to the point where I think, you know, the millennials are probably about as close to Gen X as you're going to get, because the Zoomers and the Alphas, they're all digital. They've grown up in nothing but a digital world.
Right.
They're the ones that are responsible for the fact when you go to Walmart, soon you're not going to find a CD or a DVD anywhere on the shelf over there, except maybe all collection of odd things.
Right.
Shaitan's Hammer. Let me see what he's saying here. G.I. Joe existed before the 80s era, before it rebooted itself, and existed independently, of course, media based upon post-World War admiration for them. There was that. There was a period in the late 70s where it shifted over to Adventurous Joe, because they were trying to get away from it being a military-based action figure, and then they went from 12-inch figures down to the small 3.25-inch action figures off of Star Wars, and that's where I think it really exploded at that point. Getting back to my point, I think that today's generation, their sites and their hobbies are different from what ours were. The way they entertain themselves is different the way we did, more video game based. And even then, as a gamer, Jim, wouldn't you agree that even the way you purchase video games has changed? You don't purchase a physical media anymore. You go to what is it, Steam or whatever, and get your video game that way, right?
Typically, yes. They're trying to drive us away from that. And I will say that, like Nintendo, with their most recent console announcement, they're sticking. There's still physical media. I think the way that it manifests is going to be different. You know, and a lot of games, like I'll use Fortnite as the example, where it's what they call software as a service or games as a live service. When those servers eventually shut down, there's not going to be a way to play those games unless fans step in and like do it, which I don't think they're going to be able to do with something like that. But there's already Fortnite figures. There's already like a lot of anime based stuff that's out there. So I think that we're going to see a shift of like, maybe you're not going to have a whole collection of Fortnite figures in your house. You might have like that one skin that you liked, and you have a figure or a statue of that to commemorate that one thing. So I think that what's going to happen is like the collection room becomes a collection of, like you said, a bunch of different things that commemorate all the different stuff, but not on the scale or long-term commercial viability that a toy line is. So, you know, we make fun of those statues that cost $1 bajillion, but to the person that's only going to collect maybe 10 to 20 things that commemorate that cost will even out. You know what I mean? Like, I have a millennial friend who does collect the statues, and it's because there's very specific keynotes, like this moment from this game, or this moment from this anime, or this moment from this manga, and then they'll pay the $200 for that thing, and we scoff at it. But as I look at, you know, in the camera behind me, like I can point out $200 worth of stuff in like any section of shelf I have. So it's here's really.
I think I can maybe conceptualize this a little better. Okay, so you've got a guy who wants to buy a statue of one of his most beloved IPs that he's going to display prominently somewhere in his house, he's willing to pay $1,500 for it.
Right.
If I collectively take all this shit that back here behind me, I've got way more than $1,500 invested in this. This man's going to buy one statue. He's not going to buy all this crap and have to store it in this room and not be able to play with all of it because it's all packed away in boxes. So maybe he's healthier than I am.
Maybe.
I don't know. Hey, Kate, good to see you. Glad you could stop by and say hello to us. Hard pressed to define a millennial hobbies or most interesting. I'm telling you, most of the millennials that I know, especially the ones that are the older millennials, they're a little closer to the Gen Xers. Not Gen Xers by any means, but they're a little closer to Gen Xers in their thoughts and ideas than say the later millennials and certainly the Zoomers. Okay, that's almost a whole different creature when it comes to stuff. But
yeah, and I've had a unique position with that, being married to Lauren, who was born in 1990, where she sees things through a prism that I don't. Her experience growing up in the 90s, and then we often will talk about it, whether we're watching a film or a show or something, and just kind of, she sees it differently. So like to get her to a place where she's wanting to collect or commemorate something, it's a different road than that urge that we have as Gen Xers, because she had stuff she bought as a kid, but she didn't latch onto that as much. But it's close. It's real close. Like, it's almost like she didn't consider this was something she could do. Like the spark that went off in her head when she realized, oh, I could get Lord of the Rings stuff? Shit. And then now we're just going nuts with it. But then I look at someone who was born in the late 90s, early, like 2000, something like that. Totally different kind of life, because they have never known a world without internet. They've never known a world that was dominated by physical media. Like, the whole video renting process is a distant memory for them. And it's just not the same framework. There's there's a lot of criticism levied at the generation, but it's like, well, the industry is really different by the time they came around. It was just, they led a different life. So that's why I think sometimes when we look at these other things, the anime statue, the video game figure, whatever, it's a totally different thing for them. Maybe the reason you get a Street Fighter 2 action figure as someone who's younger is because Street Fighter 2 is something that you don't realize you could play right now. There's a certain degree of like moving on beyond things, and then I don't know. It's different.
I do know for a fact that the playing with toys, physical toys, that the age which kids do that in my time was going all the way up until the mid-teens. I'm talking 12, 13, 14 years old.
Same.
It is shrunk back.
Same.
It is shrunk way back. Way back. Because as soon as those tablets and those phones get hands, the idea of around with toys just goes out the door.
Right.
I also, there's just something I was going to get to earlier that I want to touch real quick is after World War II, people's ability to have free time in which to engage in this kind of shit increased dramatically.
Yes.
Okay. Before that, dude, by the time you were 11, 12 years old, your motherfucking ass was working, Jack. And I'm talking about working hard. And you didn't have time for that stupid crap, playing with toys and shit like that we did. Us kids growing up in the 70s and 80s, we had all the time in the world because nobody had to go to work when they were a kid. I mean, I was looking at the picture of, it was a funny meme. It was a kid smoking a pipe, looked like he just came out of a mine. said that they changed the rules for kids being minors. Can't have miners mining coal anymore because the rules have changed. But they play Minecraft now. But they really want to be in those
Right.
mines. There you go.
And also too, I think that, and this might be a controversial thing to say, and I apologize if it is, but our generation, and to a lesser degree, millennials, we were often sheltered from world events much longer than our younger counterparts because the 24-hour news cycle kind of came into its own in the early 90s with the
Exactly.
Gulf War and
Exactly.
stuff.
For example, you could turn on CNN or MSNBC or whatever.
YouTube.
Yeah, and watch news anytime you want to now. We had to wait for Walter Cronkite to do it for 1 hour in the afternoon, 5 o'clock.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And because of that, I think that the quote necessity to grow up was just not there until it needed to be there. Like high school became that rite of passage. And then you go to college, or you go to a trade school, or you go to a factory job, or whatever it is you did, and then you kind of molded your life that way. Whereas I think that around the ages of probably 11, 12, you start to become much more aware of the world around you these days, and it molds you in a way. Like I wouldn't go so far as say it hardens you, but it certainly takes away some of the childhood innocence that maybe we were afforded and we don't often
Well,
talk about in those terms. I think that has a lot to do with
we're the
this.
ones who grouse and say that, boy, I wish I could go back to being a kid when I didn't have a care in the world. That's exactly what Jim is talking about there. And of course, George Valentine says, I just miss Saturday morning cartoons. Me too, dude. Me
Yep.
too. And as much, and I got my cartoons on physical media, but it's not the same thing watching our cartoons on YouTube on demand, or popping CDs in and watching them over and over again, as it was getting up early on Saturday morning and making yourself a bowl of Captain Crunch so you can pour the roof of your mouth while you sat there and you watched Heckle and Jekyll and Mighty Mouse and Popeye, and then maybe some Jason and Star Command and Tarzan. And I'm just going through my favorite Saturday morning
Sure.
ritual. It was a ritual that we went through. It was almost like a ritual is the best word I could say. Ritual.
Well, yeah, and I think that, and this is again because you're saying something that's triggering a little bit of my brain in a good way, right? It's making me think, which is always a good thing. That's kind of what WWE and other wrestling promotions have kind of done. They've kind of created that destination thing. It's still streaming. You can still get it whenever, but there are live shows that you can access every week, a couple times a week. Pay-per-views that are live, and there's just something about that for those that are into the thing. Like myself, we watch wrestling, not as rabidly as I used to, but every so often, let's catch it live, kind of a thing. It's cool, and that's kind of the last vestige of that. So I kind of wonder, in a weird sort of a way, and this could probably be its own show, will professional wrestling, sports entertainment, be the savior of toys as a nostalgic destination, or that one thing that just kind of flies the flag? Because toys have always been
that's a good point.
part of
That's
it.
a good point. Now think about that, folks. Go to Walmart or Target right now.
Mm-hmm.
Might not see superpowers. Marlin gets gone. There's a little bit of Marvel stuff. That WWE stuff has stayed pretty, and AEW. That stuff over there has stayed pretty solid all the way through all of this, has it not?
Yeah, and it's only getting better. They're making better figures, and I like the way they have the different tiers of toy. So it's almost like, depending upon how much you like a character, you can get a basic version or the ultimate or whatever. And I also feel like there are people that will grow up with the basics, and then when they get older, they're like, oh, I want to go back and get the ultimate because I can afford it now. I think some of that might be a part of it. But I, you can't rely on one industry, one thing. Lego is another good example, actually. Yeah, it's perfect. So I don't think toys will ever go away. I just think that it'll be different. How many kids do you think are going to come up and be like, dude, I really wish I still had insert name of big Lego place that they had as a kid that somehow it just went away for whatever reason, like toys. I think Lego is going to be a big surge in about 10 years for nostalgia purposes. I think wrestling figures, even more than ever, will be a big push in about 10 years too, even though we have them all the time. It's kind of interesting in that sense that those things will be there, but that's still not exactly a one-to-one of what we're dealing with. And the reason I bring up the wrestling more than anything else is because it's live, it's a ritual, and it's a constant, in as much as this is something that is happening right now that continues to happen. I don't see that business going anywhere because they're making money hand over fist and are arguably coming into a second golden age when it comes to, it's not quite the Attitude Era, it's not quite the 80s stuff, but it is more creatively exciting than it's been in like 20 years. And I feel like you're seeing young minds in the crowds of these things really latching on in a way that I haven't seen in a long time. It's just something that is that last vestige while still being innovative of like kind of thing that Gen Xers and millennials experienced. And it's funny in that respect for sure.
And of course, yes, wrestling is an interactive genre, especially if you go to the live show, because what other
Yes.
Entertainment show can you go to where you can actually interact with the people that are entertaining you, like you can with a real wrestler as he's coming out, or catcalling somebody while they're in the ring, making fun of them, and then they flip you off and all that kind of stuff. It's a different. But watching it on TV is also different from actually being in the venue with them. But it's a different experience. And if you have a chance to go to a live show, please do. Whether it's an independent live show or whether it's the big boy, take the chance. It's a very interesting experience.
We're talking about somewhere in the next 2 years going to a Royal Rumble because we're kind of like, yeah, we should go to a Rumble. That'd be fun.
Richard says he created his very own Saturday night main event in his room with his LJN figures. There you go. You're bringing back some nostalgia now. Wrestling is akin to video games in that manner. Somewhat, although you can't control the wrestler in the ring. There are video games to do that with. But as far as being at a live show, you can interact with them in a way. I mean, you can. A lot of times they'll hear you back there and they'll turn around and acknowledge you. That is something that you don't see anywhere else, I don't think. Perhaps it happened when you were on stage with your band.
Oh yeah. Oh, of course. You react 100% to the energy of the crowd, right? Although it's rare, sometimes, for example, if you had the set list constructed a certain way and they weren't reacting to the higher speed stuff, you kind of shuffle, like, let's play this one here. It's mid pace. They seem to like that better and give them more of a variety. We didn't have that a lot, but you certainly change your performance based upon the feedback of the people watching. And pro wrestling, sports entertainment, that's the foundation of what that is as performance art. It's all about constructing the story around crowd interaction. It's going after the interaction and sustaining it as much as you can within the confines of what you're performing to other people. It is probably the most interactive entertainment that exists, period, just by virtue of, like, the quote WWE universe and their power to not necessarily sway the outcome of a match, but sway the tone of a match. It's pretty cool.
Well, if you ever listen to Dutch Mantel's show over there, he will talk about that. You could go the feel of the room. What he was talking about, when you go out there, you can feel the room, and it does affect the way that they wrestle in the ring. It may be the same the outcome may be the same in Louisville as it is in Memphis, but it may be a different way to get to the outcome depending upon the heat or the lack of heat in the room, if that makes any sense.
Yes, because I think it comes down to pacing, right? Where you might draw out certain things to goad the audience into, wanting blood, or you might go a bit faster pace because they're really into it. You want to capitalize on it. Sometimes, like the what I call the telegraphing moves might become a bit more intense. And even to this day, as I'm approaching the age of 48, we're watching Raw or SmackDown or whatever. Give me the power to do the thing. And I'm like, just hit him. To this day, I'm like, just hit him. It's a unique thing. And I don't mean to harp necessarily on wrestling, but it is such that one thing that I can think of that we experienced that is still around, that has evolved with the times as much as it can or should, but seems to have the same effect on kids today as it did when we were younger, and I wonder what the next evolution of that could be, in terms of maybe that will lead to another form of entertainment that kind of gives a similar vibe, perhaps. Because I think that as long as live entertainment exists, I think that a piece of the energy that we took on as children that came into our adulthood will exist for other people. When live entertainment goes away, that's going to be the death knell of kind of that of what we now call nostalgia. I really think it'll be gone if that goes away.
Getting over here to the chat.
Yeah.
They enjoyed the Aces and 8 faction in TNA back in the day, at least at first. And no, I did not wrestle under a mask as part of that group. But thank you for thinking of me there, Boa Hicks. Kate Van D says kid shows nowadays have less toys and just more content. Kid toys now are iPads. And Richter says back in the 80s, there was a mystique about the wrestlers. We didn't know about their personal lives or what went on in the locker room. And yeah, that's true, unless you read the dirt sheets. And even then, that wasn't all true. Bill Apter, I'm looking directly at you. But anyway, yes. So,
breaking news, sir. Breaking news.
Yes, go ahead.
I just got an email from Club Grayskull, and they released preview images of Hurricane Hordak.
Been waiting for that figure. Some folks have. I've got my Hordaks, and I'm happy with what I have. But yeah, there's a lot of people who've been waiting for Hurricane Hordak to come out, and a lot of people are saying that Mattel is committed to finishing out the Origins line in that, not new figures, but releasing nowadays Origins figures are the figures that were released back in the day. And I think they are for the most part. I think we're going to see some more stuff coming out from Mattel Creations, finishing out the Origins line. And Hurricane Hordak is one of them. Thank you, Jim.
Sure.
Showing us some.
I'm going to show that on my screen here.
Go.
Yeah, we'll just put that up there, folks, to look at while we're talking. See if I can get it to show above my head. Get some use out of that headroom above my face.
Go. Right now, it's covering up your lovely face. There he is.
I know. I'm working on it. Good enough.
Kate Van D saying that she needs the curtain show interesting when it comes to wrestling. In other words, she doesn't want to know what's going on behind the curtain. She doesn't want to be spoiled to the magic tree.
Kayfabe. I get that, but I think that part of the evolution of this is recognizing that because of social media, people like to be up in everyone's damn business these days. So I think wrestling has kind of blurred the line as much as you can possibly blur it without everything being 100% quote real unquote. It's it's a thing, that's for sure. But I understand the desire for true kayfabe, and I don't begrudge that for anyone. I think it's very cool to want to keep that alive.
Same. And even back in the day, there was a place where you didn't know what was real and what wasn't, especially when it came to the wrestling in my area, Memphis wrestling.
Mm-hmm.
One of the greatest incidents ever that I can remember was when Jerry Lawler and Eddie Gilbert were fighting in the parking lot outside Channel 5 on a Saturday morning, and the people in Memphis called the police because they thought Eddie Gilbert was killing Jerry Lawler in the parking lot outside Channel 5.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And also you had like back in the day, like Iron Sheik, who's in my top 3 wrestlers. He would get death threats all the time, and they would have to like call an ambulance to take him away, or a limo or something, just to get the heat off of him. And which was nuts, to think about it now, like something that anyone would be that invested in a wrestling match now for these kinds of things to occur, kind of crazy. But yet it happened. You don't. And in Memphis was a different beast, and I think that really Jerry Lawler was by far the biggest drive of that, and you certainly can't talk about him without talking about Andy Kaufman and that whole thing, which, depending upon who you talk to, there wasn't a lot of work and kayfabe involved in that. Like, there was a respect between the two of them in terms of performers, but there certainly was not a lot of respect when it came to them as people. They did not like each other, or at least Lawler did not like Kaufman very much. That's a whole, but that's a great era.
Gilbert,
we'll never see that.
Yes, Bjorn, you're correct. Eddie Gilbert ran him over with his car. That is correct.
Nuts.
But anyway, we're getting way off the subject of tariffs, but that's the way of live streaming. But I'm letting the show. I'm just letting the show go its own way at this point here, as we are almost at 2-hour point here. We're about 10 minutes away from the top of the hour here, and a very, very, very influential and smart streamer told a long time ago that I needed to my streams around 2 hours. Who could that have been? Well, he's right here, right next to me right now. Ryan Head Jim. And yes, you did. And because at the time, me and Largo were doing crazy shit like staying up all night, and we needed to ramp it back, and the way we do that here on our show is sometimes we have to say it's time to feed the ducks. And right now, I'm feeding the ducks as we speak, and I'm going to say my piece on this, and then I'm going to let you say yours. And all
right, sir.
Nobody likes price hikes, especially when they feel sudden and unavoidable. But knowing what's going on behind the curtain certainly does help. And if there's one thing that we do here in the Weird Fantastic community, and we do it better than anybody else, we roll with the punches, we find what's fun, and we keep the collecting spirit alive. What do you say to that, Jim?
I think that's all true. And looking at this situation, as I've said before earlier in this show, and as well on my own channel, this isn't going to be permanent. But it is a very stark reminder that this hobby that we use to escape from the reality of day-to-day life, sometimes they collide painfully, but it's not going to last forever. I think that we're going to see some form of reason come back, and to not panic, to pick and choose your battles. But at the end of the day, I hope your card back stays straight. I hope your grinds are merry, and I hope that tariffs or no, you're able to find anything you're looking for at any given time at a price you feel is reasonable. Just like always, this doesn't change anything really.
No, it doesn't. And it's time to play with your toys. You got the toys, now play with them. You don't have to buy new toys all day long. Play with what you got. So until next time, keep on collecting, Stay fantastic, and we'll see you next time here on Weird Fantastic Toy Adventures. In the meantime, have a good.
Special thanks to the channel supporters. Without your help, these adventures would not be possible. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's adventure, please hit like, subscribe, and share the video.